Welcome to Creators Cafe. I'm your host, Jessica Payne. I'm a performer, performance coach, and multi-hyphenate creator. I'm going to be bringing you conversations with some of my favorite creators where we talk about the sublime and the specifics of the creative journey. So grab a drink, get cozy. Let's go. My guest, Thomas Stockwell, is a creative executive who has helped with creating and designing experiences for unscripted, documentary, and innovative VR specials. After his success helping launch the first series of The Voice, he rose quickly to the VP of Alternative Programming and Development at NBCUniversal. There, he helped create and develop delightful programming like Jimmy Fallon's That's My Jam and Amy Poehler and Maya Rudolph's Baking It. Thomas currently works as the head of Unscripted series at Meta, formerly Facebook. There, he creates innovative VR experiences. They have a comedy series called Just for Laughs, presents Surrounded, where you're in a small, intimate circle with the comedians themselves. Then there's the immersive Red Rocks concert series, where you can get to see 180-degree views, and you get to watch the concert in a fully edited VIP point of view from the edge of the stage, and then from the back of the house, you get to see all of the special effects. It's incredible. I especially love the Doja Cat and Jack Harlow concerts. Thomas himself is a dreamy, kind, creative executive who is charming and encourages us to think big and then get clear. I loved this conversation. Please enjoy Thomas Stockwell. Thomas Stockwell, welcome to Creators Cafe.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. Cheers.
Mm-hmm. What are you drinking today?
I am having a latte, a simple man, for a simple drink.
Nice. And I have an iced latte, a simple drink for a simple woman.
Lovely.
From Andante. And Sarah there says hello.
Okay. Hi, Sarah.
She's looking forward to hearing the podcast.
Awesome. Let's not disappoint her.
Yeah. Keep it up. Let's go.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. So you do so many things in your career, and they're very fancy and impressive. But I love talking to you because you're my favorite kind of creator. You're like a good human first.
Okay, good. I try to be.
So that's why you're in the chair. And so I've just gotten to know you recently in the last year or so, and I see you jet-setting off to go do very cool things. And I finally have had a chance to kind of experience some of them. So I want you to just talk about how you think of yourself as a creator and maybe what that means, what you're doing day to day now, or just how you got here and what you're excited about.
All right. Well, currently, I mean, it's been quite a journey. Yeah. It's kind of funny how you set out to do one thing and end up doing very different things than you planned on doing. Yeah. Right now, I'm doing Meta's premium VR content for their headsets for the Oculus Meta Quest, and so that's generally music, comedy, and adventure projects. So these are immersive VR projects, immersive 180, not full 360, not yet. Most places aren't doing that fully yet. Mm-hmm. But I started in talent management, worked for a big name director, and then worked in scripted for a little while with ABC and Greg Berlanti, and then crossed over to the dark side, unscripted reality television, and on Celebrity Apprentice. Funny enough.
Oh, seriously? I didn't know that one.
I know.
Whoa.
So I did 2.5 seasons of The Apprentice. And in New York, I worked out of Trump Tower and everything.
Wild.
And then from there, I got to know everybody at NBC, Unscripted, Alternative, and made the jump over to NBC, and where I was for 10 years. So I was on the network side to start. It was pretty crazy. Started season 1 of The Voice.
Wow.
I mean, I don't even think people realize that Sia was Christina Aguilera's mentor on season 1 of The Voice. I mean, funny enough.
Wow.
It looks like quite a different show than it actually turned into being.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool to sort of be there for that moment.
What were you doing as part of that?
So then I was the coordinator to the head of the whole group. This man, Paul Talegdi, who's still good friends. He ended up becoming the chairman of NBC.
Yeah.
And at that time, I think he was the EVP of that group. But that was like the days of Minute to Win It and Biggest Loser and NBC was, I think, deep in fourth place at that point in time, and then, Hallelujah got The Voice, and that kind of brought everything back for the network, which is kind of cool. And so we all got promoted from that.
Good. I
mean, as you should.
As you should when it works. We're all on it for the roller coaster ride, so
Totally.
you gotta ride it when it goes up too.
Exactly. And it was a wild time. And then they started, because of the success, there was already the scripted version of Universal Television. It was given like Kimmy Schmidt and lots of shows for Netflix and lots of shows for NBC. And they started the unscripted side of that studio. So I was the first employee that they hired. God, I'm going back.
Also a time machine.
Thought about a lot of this in a while.
Yeah.
And so I worked. Honestly, I had to figure out development at that point. I was on the network side before, and I was the first employee in a studio, which meant development and sales. And it's not necessarily the place to learn, because you kind of need to hit the ground running. And so you kind of need to learn very quickly how to do development and how to sell shows and overcome your fears of public speaking, because now you got to do this all the damn time. And you got to figure it out.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, you don't have much room to figure it out before you're potentially cut yourself.
Yeah.
So it was quite a place to learn.
And I assume, maybe this is wrong, but I assume with your time on The Voice, there's a little bit more of I'm a really good facilitator for other people's projects, whereas all of a sudden you are the head and the initiator of all of these projects.
Or people are looking at you being like, hey, this is a new studio. We have to sell projects. Where are your ideas?
Wow.
And then you're like, how the hell do I do that? You're like,
Whoa.
And then you got to figure it out. And it's, it took a while. It takes a while.
Sure.
It does to learn, and you're watching other people and figuring out how you do it and what your own voice is and what actually makes you passionate, because that actually shows and pitches sometimes. So
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So when you were in the middle of that, were there people you looked to, or was it just listening for your own voice, or what was it that kind of got you to your first kind of steps there?
It was, honestly, I reached out to a talent, and he responded. I cold emailed I'm like, should I say the name?
Oh, gotcha.
I cold emailed, I'll just say it. I cold emailed Rob Dyrdek, and he responded. and we made a pilot for NBC. And
wow.
It was kind of in that moment where I was like, oh shit, I can, it's not that easy, but it can be that easy.
Yeah.
It was I just kind of made this appear.
Yeah.
And sure, you got to figure out other development steps. And there were some executives that sort of, were your sounding board, and were you're either in the right direction or the wrong direction. But then again, with that, it's you still have to listen to your own voice on it, because the creative is so subjective that it's it was basically a Shark Tanky type show, and that might not have been what she was good at or cared about. So it's had you listened and not filtered some voices, then they would have been like, no, don't follow that.
Yeah.
But if you're just hey, I'm just going to do this and we'll see where we go, and holy shit, I made that happen without really it just is here now.
Yeah, I love that something that did not exist now exists.
Yeah, totally. And you're like, oh, well, I actually did that. And so it almost makes, I guess the word I'm looking for is it makes you a little bit fearless when you're I just cold emailed this guy, and what was the worst that could happen? He wasn't going to respond.
Right, yeah.
He just would have never opened the email.
Yeah, or it went to spam and he never got it.
Or it wasn't his email address.
Right, you
anymore.
spelled it wrong.
Yeah, you're don't ask me how I got that. I have my hands on that email address. That I'll never tell.
That's your secret, yeah.
Exactly.
No, but I think it's interesting of just we're all people in the industry, and so a lot of people are mobbed And so we're
Yeah.
respectful of them, which I think is important. And there are gatekeepers, which is important. And there's channels.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, the people that seem to be doing the most exciting things are the people that are like excited about working on things. And they're just people.
And people can feel that. I mean, obviously an email coming from NBC or NBCUniversal doesn't hurt. But like, hey, if you have that opportunity, then run with it.
Yeah.
So it's like, because I agree, everyone is, talent are people, huge name celebrities are people, huge name music artists are people, and some are nice and some aren't.
Yeah, very, very lifey.
Yeah, it's very true.
So you have this cool intersection of business and creativity.
Yeah.
The creativity, I just learned, started young, and you were on this side of the camera.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your child star days?
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
This is where my mom gets excited. Because she still has the photos of our bowl cuts. But, see, I mean, I grew up in West Hollywood, and single mom, and me and my brother, who's only 18 months older than me, so we were very close. And we were very close. And we looked like twins when we were kids. So we did a lot of print ads, and my brother did a lot of music videos. I did a lot of, I think I did more print, not that much like modeling type stuff, but it's like kid modeling. So it's not like, it's not that serious. But yeah, we were the face of Fantastic Sam's for a while, and it was kind of funny to have your face plastered on. But when you're a kid, you don't even like, it doesn't really register what it all is. You're just like, I just had the best hair in class. I mean, essentially, because my mom would like blow dry it too. And you're like, my scalp is burning.
That's so funny.
I know, the trials of being a kid actor in LA.
Oh my gosh. And so then you went from that path, and then you went down the business path in school, but came back to the industry. What was that like?
Yeah, I went to college in North Carolina, and I mean, sure, I'm not doing exactly what I went for political science, international studies, economics, so not really doing it, but it does, like, almost everything that deals with people or writing is helpful when it comes to creative, or even just being able to, I'd say even like the way you analyze something, and like given this, take, like, a lot of that actually does come because in creative, you need to be able to clearly state your creative ideas.
Yeah.
And that's a big hurdle for a lot of people. I've taken probably at this point like thousands of pitches in my career.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, not all of them are clear and succinct.
Yes.
And some are a lot of ideas that are mashed together.
Yeah.
And it is important to be able to very clearly state what it is that you're trying to either sell or get across or get someone to attach themselves to.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to that because I'm personally fascinated by that.
Yeah.
But before I move on, I think there's something interesting about, even with the political side, like the companies that you're working for are functioning as small nations.
I mean, essentially, yes.
And you're, from the economic side, like you are moving soft culture and economics with the companies that you're with are changing the face of the world and culture.
Yeah.
And so I think you're actually applying your degree way
Thank
more
you for that perspective on that
relevantly than you might realize.
That's true. Yeah, and I mean I would say it's a blessing that I've been able to work with like good sized budgets for the most part across the board, which is also another thing that's just very helpful, because the bigger the budget, hopefully the more spectacle and the bigger it is, and the more marketing it'll get, which means that the more people will then see it, and then it sort of can create its own cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I'm very interested in because I grew up on a dairy farm in Pennsylvania, and so like my first introduction to the arts was actually through movies and movie musicals and things like that. And I got my love of it through that. But then when you go down the theater path, there's no money anywhere. And everything's a nonprofit. And so it's very easy to get into that kind of small mindset.
Yeah.
But what made me originally kind of love these art forms was that it did reach internationally. And it was these huge, beautiful, epic stories.
Yeah.
So I'm always excited by not the money, but the ability to kind of tell the big stories.
Totally. And I would say that, and obviously looking back, it's a little bit different, but when you're in it, you're like, oh, you're just trying to like hang on and keep your job and impress the bosses so you can get that next bump up.
Yeah.
But when you look back, you're like, it was hugely beneficial to work to learn development at a company like NBC.
Yeah.
When not only do you have like the sort of the platform of NBC, that's sort of the carrot dangling right there. If you can get an idea, you're right at the line already.
Yeah.
So if you can get an idea over, you're suddenly on broadcast television.
That's incredible. Yeah.
And then you're working with people that are like, this is broadcast television. And well, obviously things have changed at this point.
Yeah.
But then it was like, think big, go big.
Yeah.
Go bigger. Why is this so small? Go bigger. Everything's go bigger. So you're like, when you're in the development phase, like, don't hamstring yourself with like thinking about the budget. You're like, you can pull it back.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, like, don't be like, okay, it's set in space. And you're like, okay, well, that's not going to happen. I mean, it could happen. But,
that's amazing because anyone who knows, like, I'm writing a pilot that was set in space.
Really?
So that's amazing.
I'm like, no.
Just anything but space.
But a reality would be like, really would need to be set in space, which I actually think they're making. Somebody's making that right now.
Oh, wow.
But somebody's, so people with these ideas all the time. But yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
Like, aside from it being just like waddly, that's never going to happen. Like, at least like go big. If the whole conceit is some huge set piece, like, hey, the turning chairs on The Voice is what made that show different from everything else. You say turning chairs and everyone automatically knows it's The Voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
the visual makes it.
Yeah, and that can be applied to many different things. Even if you're like, all right, well, put giant masks on these singers, and you're like, what, in a pitch, you're like, what the hell? But then, like, it becomes a huge thing.
That's what
and
worked.
You just tweaked it a little bit.
Wow. Okay, so for the development and pitching process, what shines for you other than clarity? What helps someone to get you on board and excited when it's not your idea or your team's idea, but somebody that's coming to you?
If something feels new or original or just like a different perspective on something, that's the stuff that gets me excited.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is either like, this is fucking crazy or like, I've never seen anything like this before. It's like, and I don't mean that to like in any way make, certain programming just does very well and serves a very good purpose and does very well. Yeah. So like I don't mean that to knock anybody at all, but I guess I do look for what is that original take on something, especially when I was working more on the unscripted side. And it was like, what is your fresh perspective? Yeah. And even when I jumped over and it was at that time Facebook, it is like, who are the young voices that are going to be telling us something different that we're not hearing? That's when it comes to your Yara Shahidis and Becky G's, and like they have something to say. And they're very smart, very articulate, and like, let's give them a platform for it. And so like original kind of comes in a different way in that sense. Once I moved over to that, but before it was a little more like pie in the sky, like all these shows can be whatever you want them to be. Yeah. And if it's like, and if something's going to go on NBC, it does need to feel different than something else. And that doesn't mean just like doing like the supersized version of everything that's in cable. Yeah. Yeah, that's such an interesting target to hit. Yeah. What were you excited about during your time in development that you had either was your idea or your team's idea or you got to move forward? It's always the projects that never make it to air that are always the most exciting.
Yeah, right, because there's always the like, this is my fancy thing I did, but that's not always the ones that are dear to you or you're excited about.
I know the very clear answer to this question, and R.I.P. because he is no longer with us, but he did send me birthday cards every year for a few years, which I thought was amazing, and I still have them all, and I will keep them forever, and I'm bearing the lead.
Yeah, I was like, effective hook. I'm like, yes, tell me.
And it is Paul Rubens, Mr. Pee Wee Herman himself. I grew up on Pee-wee's Playhouse. Like, me and my brother, we get up and annoy the crap out of our dad at like 5 a.m. or like, and he's like, should go watch fucking TV. Leave me alone. And so my brother and I would go watch like Gilligan's Island, and then we'll go into Pee-wee's Playhouse, and it's like a cherished childhood memory. And I love that show, and it was so oddball. And when you watch it now, you're like, this is so oddball, but it's great.
Yeah.
And especially when you talk about things like original television.
I was just gonna say, like, that is such an original voice and style, and it feels so distinct.
And even doing like all the interstitials with like Penny, and like it's just wild, and it's crazy that it even got made, but it's great. I loved it. And so I had a chance at NBC. We got very, very close to shooting the pilot, but we had scripts and everything. And I say this as a fan.
Yeah.
But we were going to do the Playhouse for primetime NBC.
Oh.
And I know it would have been so awesome if it came. Obviously, there were other things that sort of stood in the way, but the concept was there, and it was cool. It was like I got to do a table read with Pee-wee, doing the Pee-wee roles, and this had like the characters from the Playhouse, not like the movies, which were sort of a different universe. And so I got to do a table read with Pee-wee doing Pee-wee, and I did like Robot and Globey and Cherry Chair, and it was just like the highlight of my career, that I was like a giddy little kid sitting there being like, I cannot believe I get to do this right now.
That's incredible.
And all my bosses were sitting there, they were cracking up because they were like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. But it was so fun.
Yeah.
It's cool.
That's such a cool life experience.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he was so honored that was even a possibility.
Yeah,
just to have something you create come back. It'd be important.
And talk about like an original creative. It's like the epitome of that.
Yeah.
So
wow.
It was cool.
And that's cool too, because that gives you that fearlessness, right? When you see how much it affected you, that somebody made those bold choices. Yeah. That it helps you to kind of have a little gas in the fire.
Yeah, and I mean, and it also goes to what you were talking about with like passion, and like when you actually cared about something and you were like, I want to get this, and it's like, even if it doesn't happen, you're like, that was such a cool experience regardless of whatever happens, because that's life. But it was cool.
Right, because we can't be in charge of like what moves forward, what is successful. All we can do is kind of take it for our little section of what's next. But
it's like, it's nice when that happens, obviously. But that's not why you set out to do everything.
Yeah. What I know you had some other projects that you were kind of the helm of while you were at your studios. What were those projects like getting off the ground? So you worked on the Jimmy Fallon show. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, so, I mean, the first one that I got up, I think that was like a direct idea, was this show, Bring the Funny, with Chrissy Teigen and Jeff Foxworthy and Kenan Thompson. And it was wild. I mean, it was cool. I had an idea, and I sent an email. I was on location doing talent scouting for work.
Yeah.
And I sent my boss an email, and I was like, well, what about these kinds of comedy all together as an actual competition show? And she was like, come back and put that duck together.
Wow.
And then it ended up being a full series order for NBC, and that was cool. And I sold the show, and then, I do all the creative materials, do the pitch decks, you do the format. So basically everything's kind of laid out in that stage. Mm-hmm. And then sell the show in, and then pitched it to Keenan, who like signed on, and that was amazing. And yeah, really cool. And so that went, and then it like gets handed off. Not every project went that way, but this one got handed off to the current execs at NBC. And then the current side of the studio. And then I kind of go back to my little cocoon and try to come up with other show ideas.
Oh, that's fascinating. You're like a little think tank.
A little like internal think tank. And we also had like a group of producers that we worked with while I was there that can like help you sort of flesh out ideas.
Yeah.
Which was hugely beneficial.
Yeah.
And so as long as you have like the original idea, then you can sort of hand it and work with producers who are like accomplished producers, usually people that work in the field over like a development executive, because that was sort of what our roles were.
Okay.
And so I worked on the Jimmy Fallon one. That's my jam. Emmy nominated.
Congratulations.
I'm going to do it coming back for a third season, I believe. Very excited. While I did not work on the production, I did leave them with... I left them with That's My Jam, develop the format. That was like, and it was an idea that they pitched, and then I tweaked in a big way, and then it ended up being that sort of shift ended up being what made that idea a thing. And obviously they came with the Jimmy Fallon of it all, and like the power of the Tonight Show games.
Oh, sorry.
All good.
Can you just say that line again? Your shift, talking about your shift. Or it doesn't matter what you said, but something like that. So they brought Jimmy Fallon.
Oh, yeah.
And then you brought a twist.
So basically, so while I was there, I guess I'll take a quick step back for 2 seconds. So we also, in addition to me having to, basically I do original ideation, pitch projects in. We also take pitches from external that we're not necessarily associated with, but are relationship based a lot of the times, or NBC gets inbound all the time, and then they will, if something like feels like it's something or it's a relationship that they have, then often the NBC network execs would send it over to us. Yeah. To sort of vet the project or be like, hey, this is an interesting idea. See if there's any legs here. Yeah. So that's like another route that things come in, and then we also. So me and like 2 other people managed all the overall deals and first look deals that were on the studio side. So that's everyone from like Amy Poehler. She's really funny IRL, if you didn't know that. I mean, I feel like everybody knows that, but she's
nice to hear.
She's really funny.
Oh, good.
and the nicest.
Yeah.
So it's everyone from producers to talent to artists, often people from The Voice, like Adam Levine, and I think later John Legend had deals with us, but it's a lot of big name talent. Pretty cool to work with. Jennifer Lopez. Yeah. And I mean, she's stunning. Yeah. But I was staring. It was awkward. I was like,
keep it professional.
Oh gosh, she can see me. I thought I was invisible. But perfection.
That's funny.
But so Jimmy, obviously with the Tonight Show, had an overall deal with us. So we take his pitches all the time.
Oh, so it came in from him and his team.
So we developed with them.
Got it. Okay.
And same with Amy Poehler. So we worked with them. Yeah. So we like talk about ideas, kind of go back and forth with ideas all the time.
Got it.
And so they pitched something in. I was like, well, what about it being like this?
Can you talk about what your twist was?
It was essentially taking it from like a kind of a larger like singing competition show and making it a bit more like a fun Hollywood game night vibe. Yeah,
because I love the intimacy and the like getting to really have more of a like small group feel of like seeing people that you've seen in a very polished environment still be on stage and doing their thing, and it's glamorous, but then they're kind of asked to do something that's out of their comfort zone, but they can still succeed at, and that's such a cool
it's like
idea.
It's people who are actually good at singing and dancing, or are really good at faking it when they're up there just having a blast.
If somebody wants to check it out, I really enjoyed Jason Derulo doing the thong song as an opera.
And hats off to the producers, because I didn't make the physical show itself. Sure. So, and hats off to them for doing a great show. Yeah, the format.
That's so cool. Yeah, I love that idea.
And the name and the vibe and all of it does. For me, that was such a huge part. And actually, I actually got kind of a name for myself there because I pitch in projects need a vibe.
Yes.
They need a visual look. They need a vibe. They need
a unified aesthetic and voice.
They need to feel, it's like, in a weird way, you kind of need to show what the marketing campaign could be in that moment, because you do need that simple, clear, creative. Because if you think about what's the poster going to be, that's what you're selling. That's what audiences will see and either like or not like. So you don't have 3 sentences to like sell people on.
Yeah.
What's the visual? What's the quick line of what this is?
Yeah.
That will attract people. And if you apply that to the pitch phase and the deck that you're making and give it a vibe, that even if you don't have talent attached necessarily, or it'll sort of help you inform what talent might be attached to that project or who you might pursue.
Yeah.
To give it that vibe that you were originally intending.
Yeah. Are you ready to be confident and comfortable in front of a camera? Well, my name is Jessica Payne, and I would love to help you. I'm an actor, acting coach, and the host of the Creators Cafe video podcast. I have helped thousands of people to learn the skills of a Hollywood actor to be more comfortable in their body, voice, and mindset whenever you press record. So if you're an entrepreneur, a business person who needs to be in front of the camera, or you want to get into digital content creation, I would love to offer you one-on-one on-camera performance coaching so that you feel like when you press record, you can be your best self. Check out the link below for more details, and I can't wait to work with you. Let's have fun together. So one of the things you have worked on is baking it, and I just love the origin story about how that came to be in your time there.
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting, especially with Unscripted, because some things that are popular are similar to other things. Yeah. But you don't want to copy, and you don't want to have crossover of something that already exists in the market. But things are also popular for a reason. So how did that all come about?
I think the popular term is taking inspiration from shows that you like. I mean, I guess going back to, when we touched a little bit on where you just kind of have to figure out how to do development, and one of the things that I did was watch shows that I liked.
Yeah.
Or I would honestly try to watch as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
But you don't just watch it. What's the format? Write it down.
Yeah.
What is this show? What are the elements that you like about this show?
Yeah.
What are oh my God, that was a crazy twist. But what's a crazy twist in Survivor? Could you apply that to a baking show? Could you take that twist, not what it is exactly, but the spirit of that twist, or whatever the mechanism was, can there be a version of that for other genres, for dating, for baking? So with when it came to doing any sort of cooking, I did a show called Food Fighters for NBC for 2 seasons, and cool. So at least I had some frame of reference for actual cooking shows.
Yeah.
But then when you have to do it's a daunting task to get asked to create a format where there are so many shows, and so many hugely popular shows. Obviously we were just talking about Bake Off, and you don't want to copy anybody. Yeah. So you have to do serious research, and that's watching all of, or you don't have to watch the full season of everything, but you need to, there are landmines. You need to not copy people.
Yeah.
So it's if you can take all of these shows have they have something in common. If it's baking. Yeah. So there are certain things that need to be applied to all of those, because that just comes with baking itself. So, but it's what are the elements, if this has one element that you like, you obviously can't just take inspiration from that one element, or it's like, clearly, dude, you're ripping them off. Like, you're so copying them.
Yeah.
But if it's like, what is that unique element? How can I twist that a little bit so that you wouldn't know that that I just kind of paid homage to it without ripping it off, because that's not cool. But then, like, if that's paired with another element that you like from another show, suddenly you have a different show on your hand. And, making that appropriately different enough. But I think it's also a matter of just knowing what you are borrowing and knowing what you are creating originally to make sure that it's an original project.
Yeah.
But it is, I think all of these shows sort of take inspiration from each other and what are the elements that people get excited about, and like how can I bring that element to this show that's either the same genre or a different genre. That kind of gives me that same feeling. Because it's a lot of, like, when you watch shows, like, how do you feel? How do you feel when you're watching a baking show? Do you want to feel warm and cozy? Is it cutthroat, or do I want to laugh, like, nailed it? Or do I want this to be like a family cooking? Do I want to feel like holidays and like family? And it's like, I think asking yourself that question as well is important. Like, how do you want to feel when you're watching this show?
That's so cool just to think about the unscripted development side, because I come from more of a scripted world where there's books about formatting, and this is the accepted way to do this, and everybody's on the same page. So to just take that concept of like going to all of the body of work that exists and saying, what do I like? What are the formats that work?
And like put it together like a weird new puzzle.
Yeah, it's like a mosaic.
Yeah, a little Frankenstein.
So with your time with Unscripted, what are some elements that you have found are really powerful to move you and the audience? Whether it's formatting or whether it's paying attention to how you feel, or just getting the talent that you're excited to work with, like Amy, or what's helped you?
I mean, do you mean in terms of what attracts me to an idea, or?
I guess when you're developing something, what do you prioritize?
That might actually just be kind of project dependent.
That makes sense.
Because sometimes really great talent would come in, but you're like, what the hell do you have to do with this?
Product fit.
You're like, somebody wants a paycheck.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
Well, like, it's just like, it's the exact same thing an audience would ask.
Yeah.
To be like, what the hell are you doing in this show for? And sometimes that's fun.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, sometimes you're like, that literally would have never thought about that. Or that host for that game show, like, you went with, it's... That alone can change, especially if you're bringing back an old property. Like, do you want to give kind of the same vibe, or do you want to fully turn it on its head and make it go with a totally different type of talent? So I think that talent and like relevancy to that project, whether that's pop culture relevancy or just like, is that a passion of theirs? Mm-hmm. Is it something they actually care about? Because I think that in this day and age, audiences are so used to watching kind of everything that from TikTok to every show on TV, from reality to scripted, audiences can smell a rat.
Ooh, yeah.
They know when someone's not being authentic.
Yeah.
We watch enough reality TV.
Yeah.
You can pick up on it. And I mean, sometimes good editors can like fully cover that up. But for the most part, audiences can pick up when someone isn't being authentic, or if they're phoning it in, or just don't really care about something, or you are just like, oh, you guys never made that connection, maybe because there was no connection to this topic in the first place.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so you took all of that knowledge and then you swung to Facebook, which then took you to Meta.
Yes.
What was that journey like? And bring us up to speed with where you are now, because it's fascinating.
So I was at NBC for 10 years, if you can believe that. But
I can't, you're a baby.
I know. 10 years is a long time. Mm-hmm. And it was time to do something a little different.
Yeah.
And I had been in broadcast for so long. In a weird way, you have it like in the back of your head, like I don't want to get typecast as like just the broadcast guy.
Yeah.
That can't do anything else, especially when you kind of see the rise of streamers and digital, and even though it's all the same fucking thing, but you're like, content is content. There are tweaks you make, but like for the most part, it's all the same. But that aside, I was like, I'm gonna travel, I'm gonna leave, and then 1 week later, the pandemic started. So I had literally voluntarily just left my job. And then on a Monday, and then the following Monday, everyone got sent home from work for the pandemic. And you're like, no!
Wow.
So you're like, well, I'm not going to do my motorcycle diaries through South America. And that's not on the table anymore. So living room yoga, here we go. But thankfully, I have some very good friends who knew I wanted to sort of shift over to the digital, or at least get digital experience.
Yeah.
And knock on wood, got really lucky. And you don't get more digital than Facebook, Instagram, and the family of apps over there. So jumped over there as the head of Unscripted, and I've literally never worked harder in my entire life. It was so, I don't want to say insane, but it was wild. It was just like, it was a lot of content, a lot of hours, not many of us there doing it. And still this like wanting everything to be great.
Yeah.
And that was working on like Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett, and if anyone says anything negative about that show, I don't think they watched that show.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I've watched clips of it, and it was very affecting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very well made show, and so anytime anyone says anything negative about it, I'm like, you didn't watch it. You just
Is this first-hand experience, or are you just repeating?
Yeah, you're just repeating something negative someone said to you. Yeah. But also did like the Estefan's version, which was kind of fun. I mean, Gloria Estefan.
That's so cool.
Who would have thought? But we also did shows with Cardi B. And I did a show so it was the whole family of apps. So it was shows for Instagram, shows for Messenger when they were doing that. We had a Cardi B show called Cardi Tries. And, but also I think in my first week there, I like bought a show. They were like, it needs to be on the air in like 4 weeks. And I was like, oh my God. And it was this crazy rush with these really great producers and Brooklyn Beckham. So it was, pretty cool.
Wow.
And did that, and did a talk show with Yara Shahidi, and like I said before, with Becky G.
Yeah.
And also oversaw like a whole bunch of other shows in that mix as well, like with Steve Harvey, and so is Taraji Henson, and pretty incredible slate of people.
Yeah. Was that all during the early pandemic, kind of?
I started, I probably mid-pandemic is when I started over there.
Yeah.
And they were at that point essentially it's obviously this is just kind of a personal take, just because I noticed that it seemed like there was a shift, and it is at the end of the day it is a product company. Mm-hmm. And they're not like how traditional media is like, well, we're doing this and we're not doing that. It's like they can always come back to that, because there is no rule book for them. And it's like if the content fits, then the content can come back.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what the priorities are, and where obviously they planted a flag, called the company Meta, we switched, and priority shifted. And that it's big tech.
Yeah.
So it's just how it goes. And so it sort of finished out sort of the last episodes of Red Table Talk, and shifted over to the VR side. I'd already started doing their basically had like, it was the craziest phone call. It was like, we were doing a big VR project, and you have like a couple weeks to get it done, and it needs to be after the Super Bowl, and no pressure. And it was it was a race to it, and we did a project with a VR concert with the Foo Fighters, and they're so awesome.
Oh, wow.
And like, talk about a first band to work with.
Wow.
On a VR project.
Yeah.
And I was like, never thought I would do VR in my life.
Wow.
So you're like, holy shit, this is wild, a wild ride.
Yeah.
And so it started doing, I did the VR one, I did one with Post Malone. His one of his albums from like start to finish is an immersive experience, and
wow.
did work with J Balvin and Shaq and Cardi B, and that was all kind of the early days of it, and now not early days for me, not early days for them.
Yeah.
But and then once they essentially folded the previous group that I was in, but I was moved over to the reality side, Reality Lab side, and so now it's pretty much mostly VR at this point. We still do some 2D. Mostly it's music and comedy, but it's everything from I sort of manage everything from the marketing materials to buying the show to getting the talent. So it's a lot of relationships, and thankfully a lot of the relationships from NBC paid off, and still working with a lot of them, still talk to a lot of them, and a lot of the agents, and it's lately it's a lot of music, which honestly is I've always been a huge music person, and so it's kind of cool to use those skills in different ways, because I used to go to concerts. I still go to concerts all the time, so and that sort of dovetailed into, I created this series there called Red Rocks Live. Well, I guess I don't want to take full credit of creating that series, but with our partners at Dorsey Pictures, so we're shooting our second season of it right now. I will be in Denver quite a bit this year, so it's cool to be able to I think I took that pitch a couple of years ago at Real Screen, and that was a 2D pitch.
Wow.
And I was I had the opportunity, and I was like, I got that pitch from those great guys.
Yeah.
And so I called them back and was like, would you do this in VR?
That's incredible. So I have a MetaQuest 2.
Yeah.
Or I have the Quest 2. And so I got to use the Meta TV to watch Doja Cat, Jack Harlow, a bunch of your other concerts from Red Rocks, some of the comedy experiences. And it's so great because I bought this a few years ago, and it was one of those things that even in the 360 kind of view, you could see where it was going and know that it wasn't there yet. And I'm such I am drawn to the ideas and the possibilities and the vision of what it could be in the future. And also, coming from a directing and acting background, the 360 makes sense to me. Yeah. Because I've performed in that and I've directed for that. And so it's so exciting to have seen it and know that it wasn't there yet, and then see it coming to this whole new level. Yeah. So for Doja Cat, you're on stage with her. Yeah. And you can see the details of her tattoos, and you can see the sweat running down her face, and you can, you're there with her backup dancers.
And you're like, you look so good.
She does. She's an incredible performer.
Incredible performer,
and it's incredible to, how much have I watched her, and yet I feel like in such a, within one song of watching her in this format, you feel like, oh, I see her as a human, and I'm so much more impressed.
It's very intimate.
So intimate.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't think and I don't want to make any proclamations, even though I'm about to sort of make one. Yeah. But, there's just a difference between passive viewing and, lean in viewing. Yeah. And this is, you kind of need to lean in if you're wearing it on your face. So it is a very different sort of experience. And it does, you are, looking at people in a different way than you would if you were just sitting back watching a concert on Netflix or Disney Plus, and you're almost an active participant. Yeah. You have a headset on, you're looking at people, you can see, it's you're at Louis the Child at Red Rocks, and the song How High comes on, and then you see a giant cloud, and you're like, wow, I'm here.
I'm here.
It's cool.
And the the pre-concert footage and the post-concert footage,
Yeah.
they're like coming up to the camera, and so they're like coming up and getting in your face, and
There's more of that in season 2.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And it's cool. I mean, you are essentially at the best place because it is fully edited. You are at the best positioning for every moment of the shows.
Can I ask how that works? Because I was fascinated going into it of like how, are we going to just be in one position, or is it like, one camera that we can move around in, and it's fully edited, but there's kind of back of house, so you get to see the whole stage and all the pyro.
Yeah.
And then you get front, like right on the stage level, and then you also get a couple of other views. So there's obviously multiple cameras.
Yes.
And then it's edited, but even within the editing, you can still turn to see the 180 view.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that's fascinating to like conceive that format and execute it.
Yeah.
What's that been like?
And I've been working over there in VR for like overall not that long, a few years now, and it's been incredible to see how the tech has progressed in that short period of time.
Yeah.
From the early day, I call it my early days of like Foo Fighters and Post Malone, and like those are incredible projects on their own. But like just to see where we've progressed, where we have movement now, and we have strapped VR cameras to techno cranes, and now we're making specialty cameras that sort of like run on tracks but can also go up and down.
Yeah.
So that we don't have to send a guy out there to hoist a camera up.
Yeah.
Or change cards. It's like now it can all be very easily done.
Oh, wow.
With a moving track on stage. Or, obviously at Red Rocks, everyone has kind of a different stage setup. So everything is sort of tailored to each individual stage setup, but it is multiple cameras, and now there's movement in it, and it's pretty fascinating, to be totally honest. It's and like honestly, I think it's cool for some artists. I mean, sure, we live in a world where like there's lots of content, period, but there isn't like how often does like if you're an artist, there aren't that many opportunities to get beautiful edited footage of like a show in an iconic venue.
Yeah.
So you're like, you now have that.
You have that.
But it's now yours.
Yeah.
And like you can go back and look at it, and you might not care as much right now, but you might in a few years and be like, holy shit, I could go back and like, I'm one of the handful of people that got this incredible VR camera or VR concert at this point in time.
Yeah. And I think it kind of opens that VIP experience to an audience that wouldn't be able to afford it. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, because you do need to travel to Denver. You have to travel to Red Rocks. And it is one of those locations where people do actually fly there. And so you do, in a nice way, you have a very energetic audience because you are at an iconic venue, and usually people have traveled in to see their favorite band, but it's not that big of a venue. So it is nice that you could just sit at home on Friday night and be like, well, I didn't get tickets to that one, or like to my favorite artist that's playing there, because we have some really incredible people lined up this season. And it's season 1 obviously as well, but like holy shit. And I'm like super pumped for it. But whether you can be there or not, it's an intimate experience where you're either like there watching your favorite artist, or you're like, I'm just gonna go check out whoever it is. And they're all great. So it's like you can't easily just find. It's just a different way to discover a new band.
Absolutely.
And,
right. Like I got to see some favorites, and I got introduced to new ones already. It's really cool.
And you're like, you're not just like sitting back watching like maybe a music video or something, or someone's shaky camera from,
Exactly.
And I am guilty of that too. I do post from concerts, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's really shit. But surprised to doing business and following me on Instagram. But
that's funny.
I apologize already.
And a lot of cute puppy photos and hiking.
Puppies,
love it.
Hiking, and gay stuff. Gay trips.
Yeah, lovely.
But yeah, so I mean, I think it is it is a cool experience because it is so intimate and it's so different than just leaning back. I mean, I weirdly, you can watch some concert and they're beautiful, but I don't necessarily feel a connection to when you are just sort of passively watching something.
Yeah.
When you're like in it, especially like something the way that I think that Jack Harlow was shot, it's very intimate. You're very close to him on stage. You get the vibe, you get the swagger. You're like, this is sexy.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a
really...
mood, it's a vibe. He's like strutting down that catwalk, and you're like, we had a techno crane moving. You're like floating alongside him, and you're like, you're right in the best positioning. And then we do cut to the dock portions. It was kind of cool. We shot it last Thanksgiving. It was out in Kentucky for the whole week, and we're on his tour bus and shooting all the. He did a home state tour, so we kind of like followed into a whole bunch of different locations.
It was like a documentary woven in with his concert. It was really beautiful
and super impressive that the team was able to. I mean, we had like 4 weeks before that launched to put the whole thing together.
Wow.
So I mean, that's usually our timelines are pretty compressed.
Yeah.
So it's impressive. That's one of my favorites.
It was fantastically done. Congratulations.
It's the opening scene where he's coming up from under the stage and going above it. But I'm like, every time I see it, I'm like, I love this.
Well, and it's so visceral because you're like his best friend who's invisible, who gets to like be on stage in the concert with him. And I love as a performer that it's like it's a bare stage. Yeah. It's like he's not depending on the lights and the pyro and the backup dancers and everything. It is one man doing his thing, and you get to be there with him. It's so cool.
Have that kind of charisma. I'm like, I'm in. You sold me.
Yeah.
Like you have it.
Okay. What is your creator's challenge for my audience?
Creator's challenge. Oh yeah. I think. Oh my God! Hopefully I don't have to give my own example of what this might be. But
I mean, you wouldn't have had to, but now you might.
Is this where 10 minutes you have something to do?
Yeah.
I would say a fun exercise would be take your favorite hobby and turn it into an outrageous reality show.
I love it. I love it. Okay, you teased it. What's your example?
Oh my God. I was trying to think about this without copying one of my absolute favorite show ideas.
Okay.
So if they are listening, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So I like to cook. So and I make skip the stage of being able to make the simple stuff because I've done Blue Apron for years. Of course, every time I try to cook, it's like an hour and a half. But so they're like pretty opulent meals. I mean, delicious, but very nice meals. So it is like between you and your pantry. Is this floor is lava? Is this the American Gladiators shooting tennis balls at you?
Yes, I would watch that.
Are these housewives with paintball guns pelting you down?
Oh my God. I see why you have the career you have.
It's all over the place.
I love it.
But it is kind of a good exercise in, I think, thinking big and being weird, because that's half of it.
Fun.
Be weird. There are no rules half the time.
Yeah.
It is honestly, it's one of the things that I tell a lot of people we work with in VR, not to take it back to work, but it is like, obviously there are some rules, but like, this is VR.
Yeah.
This is emerging. Yeah. This is innovation. Like,
I love it.
Be weird.
Yeah.
Do something different. Like, the 2D rules don't need to apply here.
Yeah.
Like, if you, you just need to be able to execute it well. But if you want to turn a timeline and start at the end and end at the beginning, and you can execute it, then I don't know what that means. Yeah. But why not?
It's very choose your own adventure.
Totally.
Which is
and you're
fantastic.
and sometimes you just want to push people to be like, you have the license to do that.
Yeah.
Obviously in the appropriate setting, depending on where you are and what you do, but sometimes this should be fun.
I love that. Where can people find you?
On Instagram, on the Lamb 84.
Awesome.
On Bonnie and Clyde, it was my AIM screen name from like high school. That has stuck with me for life.
Hey, and you got it. And check out all the concerts on MetaQuest.
Yes,
TV.
on MetaQuest TV, but also in Horizon Worlds.
Yeah.
Once you download the app in your headset.
Yeah.
Meta Horizon Worlds. And
they have two different feels, because one feels like kind of real world, you're at a concert, and one is like you're watching it in the Meta Horizons world.
So in Meta Horizon Worlds is right now, it's in technical jargon time. It's that is monoscopic right now, but is about to be stereoscopic, which provides that depth perception.
Yeah.
And right now, MetaQuest TV has that depth perception. But coming very soon, Music Valley within Meta Horizon Worlds. It should be. I'm like looking in that direction. There's a camera over there.
It's okay. We're coming at you in stereo.
We're coming at you. Yeah. So it is one like, sort of a more social environment where you can watch, and like there's some mini games that you can play. Because I mean, when content is on your face, you don't necessarily have to be staring at the screen 24/7. Because who does that normally? Nobody. No. So there are other people there, and it is. I like to go in and spy at our premieres, so watch out if you're in there at our premiere, because I might be sitting next to you if you're saying good or bad things about the concert.
Join the community and share your creative challenges on Instagram and Facebook at Creators Cafe by Kika Labs. And also check out my website, kikalabs.com, KIKALABS.com, to sign up for the mailing list so you always know when a new podcast is released, and to check out my coaching and digital courses to help you be a more confident and joyful creator.